So yeah, we have less than 24 hours until Apple's next event, and I like doing these last-minute leaks because it reminds everyone how wrong the leakers typically end up being, and how many expectations are shattered by Apple's reality versus what we expect. So I think somebody's getting trolled. I don't know if it's a real leaker or not, but either way, I think it would be fun to run down everything that's rumored right before the event starts tomorrow. That way it's fresh in our brains of who to blame if our expectations get too high. Let's begin. Forgive me for being pessimistic, I've just seen this exact same thing happen before. Particularly just a day before the event begins, all of a sudden people get really confident and get very like panicky at the last minute, like, oh, actually someone told me this and someone told me this and actually this is gonna happen, and then you find out who was getting fed wrong information. It could even be from Apple, intentionally designed to sway people off course. But in previous videos I've talked about at least what I was expecting at the peak performance event, which is mainly spec bumps across the board. No new designs, iPhone SE with 5G and the A15 chip, iPad Air 5 playing catch up with Center Stage and the A15 chip and 5G, and then we would get this very basic MacBook Pro refresh. It would look exactly like the 13-inch model, just now with an M2 chip instead of M1, and that was gonna be it. Maybe Apple launches some new TV Plus show or some new tier of Apple News Plus, but for the most part, it was just gonna be spec bumps. But within the last couple hours, there have been so many new news drops between Gurman, between Quo, and Luke Miani. So Gurman, for one, is saying that Apple might actually want to unveil their more affordable standalone monitor at this event because they finished development of it months ago, and they originally were hoping to launch it alongside the MacBook Pros back in October, but maybe due to chip shortage or ramping up issues, they couldn't yet. And that's kind of aligning with 9to5Mac's report that there is a Mac Studio in the works about this like larger size version of the Mac Mini with more powerful silicon on the inside. And then Luke Miani also tied in with this report saying his sources are suggesting like a thicker Mac Mini, and it's also being launched alongside this Studio display, which simultaneously corroborates with Ming-Chi Kuo's report, because he's on Twitter now, by the way. Congrats, Kuo. You finally figured out how the Twitter works. But Kuo is actually suggesting that Apple is releasing a 27-inch standalone monitor very, very soon, so possibly tomorrow, and it won't have mini LED, which I thought was a bit interesting. Pretty much all the sources are alluding to there being a Retina, 5K display panel, but with bezels, a little bit thicker than that of the Pro Display XDR, but still black and no chin. So hallelujah, it sounds like a fantastic display. Ian Zallo collaborated with Luke and came up with these renders, which look pretty dang good. They're basically combining the 24-inch iMac stand with a Pro Display, flat industrial look. My only issue with these renders is, where's the ports? I mean, it looks like a power connection in the back, but maybe Apple's planning some kind of custom power cable that also provides data. So Apple's done this in the past, like back when I had a cinema display, you had your power and your data all attached to one cable at the end. So you had MagSafe and Thunderbolt and USB all attached to the power cord coming out the back. But even the cinema display had a few extra USB-A ports on the back if you wanted to tap into them. So I'm feeling like there should be at least a couple Thunderbolt ports on this monitor, right? Especially if they're trying to advertise it alongside the Mac Studio, which Ian also came up with some really cool renders for. We'll find out very shortly if they're accurate, but once again, it's kind of missing a lot of crucial details in my opinion. Like, yeah, it's pretty easy to imagine they make a Mac Mini a bit thicker. Honestly, I think it would look kind of ugly on a desk considering how close it is to the bottom of the monitor when they're sitting next to each other. But on a technical level, if we're just talking like render quality, yes, the renders look very, very good, but we're also not getting any port info. They don't want to show the back of this thing. I want to know, does it have 3 Thunderbolt ports or 4 Thunderbolt ports? Does it have HDMI? Does it still have USB-A? These are the kind of details that I'm very, very interested in. Same thing with the monitor. They're all saying like, yeah, Apple's gonna make this cheaper standalone monitor, but no one wants to say how much it'll cost. So of course that means everyone's wildly speculating, oh yeah, $500 or $1,000, that would be so good. Even though they're selling LG ultrafine displays for $1,300, there's still a ton of people out there assuming, oh yeah, this is definitely gonna be $1,000. I'm trying not to get my hopes too high for that. Even though it's not mini LED, I I need to know if it has 120 hertz or not. You know, this is gonna pull as much power as it wants from the wall. So I say, give us a high refresh rate display, and if making it more affordable means not having mini LED, that's a win in my book, you know? I'm trying not to get too pumped for this because the standalone monitor is by far the most exciting product of the year for me personally, because I already blew all my money last year on Apple products. Now I just want a really cool, very clean external monitor to dock my MacBook Pro with, because I'm used to my 27-inch iMac Pro, so going back to a 16-inch display feels kind of crammed, but I'm not willing to spend $6,000 on a Pro display with 60 hertz. That's just, not acceptable. But if the contrary means high refresh rate with no mini LED, yeah, I'll probably take that compromise. I honestly don't notice a huge difference in the color performance between my MacBook Pro and my iMac Pro, just being honest with you guys. I mean, it's there when you watch HDR content and that kind of thing, but honestly, I don't do that very much in the first place, so if I can shave off a couple $1,000s off the external monitor and it still is Apple branded and it's still very clean looking, I'll take those savings as long as I get my high refresh rate. But Luke also went on to mention that Apple is planning a purple version of the iPad Air 5, which is not a rumor we've heard before, but I will mention a fairly easy guess considering how Apple introduced the iPad mini refresh last year, and purple was one of the more highlighted colors, so bringing that to the refreshed iPad Air line, especially as in recent history, Apple's been very comfortable with fairly muted colors. I was pretty disappointed by the iPhone 13 and Apple Watch Series 7 colors last year, so let's just extend that disappointment into more configurations, because he's also saying to expect a green iPhone 13, and that is also a fairly reasonable guess because we did get the purple iPhone 12 last year. Apple likes doing these mid-refresh cycle iPhone drops where they're like, and we want you to buy the 6-month-old iPhone again because you couldn't get this color before, and that instantly makes it more attractive and people want to buy that now. Again, it aligns with what Apple has done in the past. You know, when we recorded the tech podcast last week, Randy was making very similar guesses to these, and we did not have any sources. These are just flat-out predictions. But I think the most interesting point Luke brought up in his video is that his source is saying there are no new laptops coming tomorrow. So that means someone's gonna be wrong. It was MacRumor's source claiming that there was gonna be an M2 chip launching in the 13-inch MacBook Pro and there would not be a new design. Now Luke's source is saying Mac Studio is coming out and it might have M1 Pro or M1 Max chips or even multiple M1 Max chips put together, but no new laptops, right? So we've got a couple people saying colorful MacBook Airs coming or rebranded MacBook Pro coming, brand new Mac Studios coming, so someone's gotta be wrong here. I don't think they can all be right necessarily, and typically whenever we hear this many like reports all screaming at once, like Ming-Chi Kuo is also saying Apple's working on their gallium nitrate chargers with the more compact 30-watt USB-C brick, and that might debut later this year, and we're seeing references to Apple adding treble clefs to iOS beta code, so people are thinking a new classical version of Apple Music is launching tomorrow too. Not all these things can be right. I'll be very, very surprised if everything that's rumored ends up happening, because I've seen this movie before. I lived this reality, and I can clearly imagine Apple either sending out fake leaks to throw people off, or someone trolling in the tech community and trying to make a bunch of people come across as untrustworthy. That kind of stuff does happen, and this could very easily be another Apple Watch Series 7 situation. So I would not say confirmed about any of these reports, but it's fun to just kind of go over everything that's rumored and just try to remember these sources tomorrow when we find out what was real and what wasn't. Personally, I am mostly hoping that the studio display ends up being real, because an under $2,000 external monitor with thin bezels made by Apple that I could dock with my MacBook, that would be super duper perfect for me. I don't think I need a Mac Studio personally, but I could totally see a ton of content creators and a lot of people who want more power than the M1 or M2 chip can offer that would totally buy a Mac Tower with that kind of performance in it. That sounds wonderful. Of course, I want to know more about the ports on the back. I want to know more about the I/O, and I definitely want to know if this standalone monitor is going to be 120 hertz. That's a big deal for me. So what are you guys most looking forward to? Are there any of you out there that are like, yeah, iPhone SE 5G, that sounds fun? Or are there most of you out there basically expecting Apple Glass is going to launch tomorrow and this is going to be the biggest keynote of the century? There's pretty much no in between. Everyone kind of falls on either side of those predictions. All that good stuff. Let me know what you're thinking down below. And of course, I'll be live streaming before the event starts and during and after. Gotta cover my reaction and all that. It's always fun. So I'll see you there tomorrow morning. This is your Apple Shape here. I'll see you all in the next one.